Having grown up in that weird period where smart technology was becoming more and more prominent with each year, with more entertainment finding its home online, it was a hard time for toy companies as they watched their primary audience waning away from them. I can imagine it was a tough thing to do to adapt to these changes. To their credit, a lot of toys were becoming more advanced in their own ways, drawing in attention from that. Today, I wanted to talk about some of these toys, ones that sort of bridge that gap between toy and new and interesting technology. Some of the biggest names won't be included because I would like to do videos for those on their own later on, so this is just kind of my way to talk about a few of these toys that don't have enough public information or recorded history on them to make an extended video. I grouped these two together because they both play on the same concepts and were also competitors to one another, and I thought it would be really fun to compare them to each other, or at the very least talk about them side by side like this. Starting with the more palatable of the two, the iDog is a toy with a pretty storied background in reference to technology, as it would be one of the first kid-oriented mainstream toys to so directly and intentionally replicate the style of Apple's products. Noticing the prominence of such technology being produced by the still relatively up-and-coming Apple brand, Sega Toys took to designing a toy to closely mimic the style and functionality of the company's products to capitalize off of their growing popularity. First released in Japan in 2005, the iDog was a small robotic dog with a mix of white opaque plastic and transparent pieces with silver accents, as was the look of Apple's early product. The dog appeared as any typical dog shape would, with a big head, floppy ears, a tail, a big fat nose, two big front legs and paws, and not in the back, though. In lieu of any eyes, the iDog would sport a set of LED lights that would flicker and dance around when in use. These lights would signify the dog's mood, green being good, yellow being so-so, and of course red being some kind of upset. To boost its mood, you would stimulate your iDog either by playing music aloud for it to dance to, in which by doing so it would move around, wiggle its ears, shake its head, make noises, and light up. Or you could plug your MP3 player into it and it would both play your music and dance along to it. You could get a Japanese Sega Toys iDog in 5 different colors alongside a few different special collaboration iDogs. The iDog saw major popularity on the Japanese market, so Sega Toys made good with Hasbro to market and sell iDogs to the United States, where Y2K culture was ever more prevalent than before, and even more easy to make money off of. When the iDog hit the shelves in the US later in 2005, they had a few changes made from their Japanese variants. Hasbro had paired up with Tiger Electronics to create an alternate iDog design for the company, and these would be the ones that were the most common and would be shipped worldwide by Hasbro. Since they did this, it meant that some of the iDog's properties were a little different, namely the addition of back legs, changing the beeps and boops of the original iDog to more dog-like woofs and barks, and the most important change of all, the addition of little Tootsie Toe Beans. Across the span of its existence, Hasbro's iDog saw a stacked roster of color variations, collaborations, and new takes on the product. There were about 10 or so solid colors you could get, as well as 3 polka dot patterned iDogs, 2 animal patterned iDogs, iDogs sporting the makeup of the band Kiss, and of course 2 Spider-Man themed iDogs. One normal one and one that's gonna put some dirt in your eye. In 2007, Hasbro released an even bigger and badder iDog called the iDog Amped, which proudly promised louder speakers and even more dancing movement from your iDog, adding motors in one of its front paws and some to create more movement in the head. The iDog Pup and the iDog Mini are one and the same, the iDog Pup being the Hasbro distributed version of Sega Toys' iDog Mini. The gimmick of this toy was that they were just smaller, more compact, and more cute, and appeared more like iPods in the sense that most of the body was colored with a small white screen in the middle of its more square head. Hasbro also released a bigger iDog called the iDog Dance, which does what it sounds like it does. A smaller version called the iDog Clip, literally just a functioning iDog head that you can clip onto something, and a few big beefy plush versions of the iDog. Maybe you aren't a dog person, my bad. In that case, maybe try an iCat. Allergic to cats? How about you get your own little Apple penguin in the form of the IC? Like IC like a penguin? You get it. If a penguin seems like too much maintenance, maybe try a more hardy animal like the iTurtle. But maybe don't try those because they are very rare now. And if you don't dig the semi-aquatic properties of those last two, maybe you'd better go all in and get this silly little creature, the iFish. He's so stupid and dumb, I love him. Unfortunately, as the 2000s wore on and the iDog line of products was becoming more and more gimmicky, with the company running out of ideas and animals to use to go towards a now years-old product, the entire iDog family was discontinued in 2009. But since I brought up silly creatures, like I mentioned before, I wanted to compare the iDog to its even sillier and more abstract competitor, Zizzle's Is. Released in the same year as the iDog in 2005 by a company much smaller in comparison to Hasbro, the idea for Is was clearly something less aesthetically technology-driven, rather playing on the functionality-based allure of it. Coming in 5 different color combinations, Is looked more organic than the iDog's more robotic, Apple-inspired appearance. Instead having an alien-like look to it, with 3 big stompy-looking feet, a big horn-shaped snoot for a mouth, similar horn-shaped ears, 2 big eyes bugging out of its head, a little dial-shaped circle on its tummy, and a silly little antenna on its head to top it all off. One-time president of Tiger Electronics, Roger Schiffman, who helped make the Furby, has stated that the goal was to create a repeat hit like the Furby, and it's assumed that this is all while taking advantage of the new popularity of personal devices like MP3 players and iPods. Kind of like a hybrid of a Bop-It and an organic being, twisting the protrusions on either side of its head or poking around with the antenna on top of its head, which is actually called a flicker, you can manipulate the sounds that Is will make. There are also 5 buttons located on his body, and you can reposition its legs a little, although this will do nothing to the sound of whatever is playing. Is can be used without a secondary device, although it does have an audio jack where you can plug in an MP3 player or something. It has motors within itself to make the eyes move, and lights that spill out from that little snoot in front. Most of the gimmick of Is was that it would layer the preset audio clips and sound effects over your music, and notably, one of the major functions of the toy was that it didn't have to listen to you, and would do quite literally whatever it wanted if you let it alone to do it. Is has 3 different modes of play, setting it apart from the iDog's seemingly singular purpose. In the normal play mode, the most basic mode, it will do what I described before, but there's also a button you can push to set it into a mode where it will only act as a speaker. DJ mode leaves Is to its own devices, where over time it will begin to add more and more weird things to your track. There is a button you can press on its stomach that will edit the last change made by Is. For example, if you don't like what it did, you can tell him to not do that. But like I said, particularly in this mode, Is will register that you pressed the button, but doesn't have to actually listen to you. The final mode, WZIZ-FM mode, Is will make music, making various static noises between tracks to simulate changing channels on or tuning a radio. Deemed mostly as a noisemaker, which Is was so much louder than the iDog, the toy pretty quickly admitted defeat to its competitor and was discontinued sometime in 2006 or 2007. I can't actually find a solid date on this. Someone suggested that I cover the products of Huawei, and luckily enough, they fit this topic perfectly and have kind of a unique spin on the concept of technological toys. Starting specifically with the one that started it all, Huawei's Robo Sapien was released in 2004 with the intention to provide a more advanced robotic friend when compared to other animatronic pals in the category like Furreal Friends or even the Furby. Robot toys had been made before, but the Robo Sapien was basically like a living sci-fi creature, a miniature robot for kids to have for their own. Described as a bimorphic robot, the robot could both move on its own, as if it were living, and be controlled by an outside control manned by the user, with a total of around 67 commands that it can execute. The robot can walk, grab and throw things, and use its speaker to make noise and speak. It's even designed with some kind of an internal weight system that it can shift around to maintain its balance. Robo Sapien released in a basic black and white color, but can be purchased in an additional 7 colors, such as a shiny red, blue, and even a transparent version. Coincidentally, the Robo Sapien also has a Spider-Man version that was released in 2007, and also a Homer Sapien, for whatever reason. I really do like this robot, and the fact that the main sales point hails it as a STEM tool and educational in nature really scratches the itch I have in my brain for cool robots. Look at those little gripsters. While this toy doesn't necessarily appear to play on the specific themes of handheld entertainment, it does imply said STEM concepts, which became more and more popular as an education concept as the years went on, and technology like this became more advanced. Robo Sapien itself has been used in STEM classes for this very reason, and in recent times, the robot has had many upgraded versions made, some of which now implement smartphone controls starting in 2012. While Robo Sapien was Huawei's first experience with creating a user-friendly robot, the company would also explore creating others. After having made a little man, it was now time to make man's worst enemy, a dinosaur. Roboraptor is exactly what it sounds like. Released in 2005, followed by a similar product in 2006, Robo Reptile, these toys would have very advanced technology implemented in them, such as being able to respond to motion, light, and sound, interacting with the user on a closer level, with complex animations much like Robo Sapien's detailed yet simple ability to move around. Huawei is also responsible for making the world's first radio-controlled flying insect, taken directly from their company's product timeline on their website, and how on earth did I never hear about this little scrumbly bumbly? The Flytek Dragonfly released in 2007 and was Huawei's first flying robot overall. It has the appearance of some kind of sci-fi dragonfly, an aesthetic that most of their products have. The Dragonfly is notable for the fact that it actually flaps its wings, something pretty unique that not very many products have done. This little dude comes in blue and green, the most common colors, but can also be found in red and orange. If you've ever seen this meme image of a remote-controlled Barry B. Benson, just know that this is in fact a version of a Flytek robot. One more silly little guy I want to mention, the RoboQuad, also released in 2007 and looks like Rob if he were an abomination. This little dude has 4 legs and is said to be the first robotic arthropod and can move multi-directionally because of this, the freedoms given by having so many legs. RoboQuad has 4 spider-like legs, a long neck, and a wide flat head with 2 big eyes, a little dotted pattern on either side of its eyes, and a little hole that looks like he has a mouth and he's going, oh. A lot of Huawei's products would appear abstract, with a few efforts at making more palatable toy-like toys such as the Roboraptor, namely the Alive Baby Animals line of toys, Light Sprites, and Electro Kids. However, there is another more recent robot from Huawei that you might be familiar with, MIP. I think I'm pronouncing that right, MIP. 10 years after the Robo Sapien, Huawei released MIP, a small robot with big wheels, a round head, big eyes, and 2 little claw-like hands. Made specifically with phone compatibility in mind, this was the most prominent of Huawei's robots to be marketed with phone controls from the get-go. The robot has multiple functions and games that could be played through the app, taking advantage of its advanced technology carried over from multiple of the company's previous robots. Again, making itself a good tool for STEM students, the robot even has modes where it can be programmed by the end user. It's a very interesting robot and is a pretty open use one too. MIP comes with an app for your phone that helps you use it, and the most notable part of this app is the MIP Arcade, which was a big marketing standpoint for it in the late 2010s, as you may have seen on TV commercials during this time. Most recently, you may have seen Huawei's Avastars line of toys that resemble a certain computer game with blocks. They were sued for this, by the way. The most blatant version of what can only be loosely called a toy, the Fuhu company began creating tablets specifically for kids starting in 2011. These tablets have all too big of a reputation in many ways, despite the company only having a good 3 or 4 years in the limelight. But we'll start small.
Hey Kindle, when I wake up, I like to sing a good morning song. You wanna hear it? Make my bed, brush my teeth, time to get dressed, eat my cereal. Good morning, Redbird. Good morning, Redbird. Okay, what's your song?
Now that dumb song is going to be stuck in your head all day. What you may remember as a weird commercial was probably your first brush with Fuhu's Nabi line, featuring the tablet itself as the basis for the commercial. The tablets were made specifically for child users, having pretty reduced functions compared to the wide-open nature of others such as the iPad, and also had additional protection in the form of a rubber bumper around the device that came with it, giving the tablet its butterfly-like silhouette, which gave it the name Nabi in the first place, as it is the Korean word for butterfly. The tablets came with a built-in kind of personal bubble of its own in the form of the Fu's Kids platform, anticipating big sales based on those of the iPad and similar tablets that had been skyrocketing since the iPad's release in 2010. Being a damaging pioneer all on its own, Fuhu negotiated a deal with Toys R Us to sell their products exclusively at their stores. In the holiday season of 2011, Toys R Us sold 10,000 tablets within 2 weeks, and ordered 15,000 more, much to the dismay of Fuhu, who would expect them to order much more given how well they sold. After this debacle, and yes, I just said debacle, the Fuhu company would cut ties with Toys R Us, stop producing the Nabi, and begin to create a Nabi 2, of which the company was able to sell 750,000 through Walmart, Target, and Best Buy. Fuhu would accuse Toys R Us of copying their product after they released the Tabeo? Anyway, a similar tablet, in the year after Fuhu ended their relationship. Tablet sales of the Nabi 2 and other products made by Fuhu to replicate tablets on various levels of tabletness would continue Fuhu's success into 2014. But once 2014 came around and more companies like Apple itself and Amazon with their Kindle products began to market more kid-friendly devices, Nabi tablets would cease to sell as well. Fuhu gave it one more try with the Nabi Dream Tab, but this product would be an all-around failure and eventually be one of the many reasons why the company would fail and file for bankruptcy, having its final operating year in 2015. I wanted to mention these tablets because I wanted a way to talk about how the life of them, while brief, has absolutely decimated the way kids live. You've seen those snotty little kids with their face stuck in an iPad in the store? Well, this tablet is the reason why. The initial creation of the Nabi as being for kids spurred other companies to make tablets for kids themselves, and this is why it's such an accessible and normalized thing now. I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for a kid to have a little bit of tablet time. I'm not a monster who hates fun, and I know that they can be used as a great educational tool, but it's really no 100% substitute for the tangible way that people my age had it as kids. And I know I sound so old saying that. And another thing, kids are getting tablets and smart devices at younger and younger ages, but no companies are making any effort anymore to harbor kids in places made specifically for them, like Club Penguin, or Animal Jam, or... Webkinz is a product that needs little to no introduction. They are unique in many ways, both on their own and in reference to everything else I talked about in this video. The first of its kind in the way of plush to life, if you can really call it that. Webkinz work off the gimmick of there having two worlds to exist in. When you buy a stuffed Webkinz plush in the store, you can go home and enter the code included on its tag in the Webkinz website, where it would unlock that stuffed animal as a virtual pet for you to take care of, kind of like a Tamagotchi. There are multiple games to be played, interactive elements with NPCs who most definitely will not get framed for killing people's pets, and ways to customize your pet and the room it lives in. There's a slew of animals to be had, from cats and dogs to deer, frogs, and lions. Released by Gans starting in 2005, Webkinz grew to an immense popularity among school kids of the early aughts for being such an interactive and fun digital world to explore. The company sold multiple Webkinz plushies with their own cute little personalities and some with their own special foods to be fed in-game. The game includes many ways to earn the game's currency, Kinz Cash, to help feed and clothe your pet. You weren't limited to just the one pet either, meaning that kids would collect both the plush animals and the virtual ones online. Webkinz has been hailed for having a lot of heart and has a lot of nostalgia for kids who grew up in the time period where it was popular. But, as it happened for many online worlds, both the decline in the game's popularity in general and the death of Adobe Flash Player caused the game to become pretty much dead itself. And while it did get a downloadable version and a mobile version to preserve it, the game was beginning to show its age and prove that it wasn't as popular as it was before. Gans didn't want to give up on the Webkinz brand, as it had become very nostalgic for now young adults, as much as it had probably made them millions of dollars. But instead of shaping up the Webkinz we knew and spending money on marketing new products, they instead opted to create a whole other version of Webkinz, dubbed by fans as Webkinz Next. The most glaring difference between the two iterations is that this one ditches the 2D paper puppet appearance of the pets and environment, and instead uses a cold and almost eerie 3D animated style for everything, including your pets, of which there are only a few as it's relatively new, having released in 2020. Given the last time I checked was also a couple months ago when I wrote this script. This also means that not a lot of plushies are actually made that are compatible with Next yet, and the ones that are kind of weird themselves and don't retain that almost scrappy look to them that the old Webkinz did. These pets are, however, also compatible with Webkinz Classic, which I guess does make them kind of versatile in a way. A lot of people don't like this game as it doesn't have a lot of the features that the old one had, but more importantly lacks the feeling that Webkinz Classic provided. Classic appeared homely and almost child-made, like the world of Kinzville existed in the imaginations of the children playing with their stuffed pet. Webkinz Next feels more like a fever dream than a warm memory. It is nice to be able to say that Webkinz hasn't left us in its entirety, and Webkinz Classic does still get updates and now functions off of additional currency and methods of buying Webkinz in-game, rather than in real life. That does take a lot of the magic away from it in my opinion, but they've kinda just moved that magic to Webkinz Next, and just because one exists doesn't mean that the other can't, so at least there's that. It's a little bittersweet knowing Webkinz wasn't what it once was, and as someone who actually didn't get to play it until sometime a couple years ago, I would imagine it's even more bittersweet to be able to return to it and find it exactly as you left it. So that's it. Hopefully in the future I get the opportunity to talk about a group of similar toys like I did here, as I did have fun with this video. The Huawei section was actually a suggestion from a viewer, I think I mentioned that already, so if you ever remember a toy I haven't covered on the channel yet, I'm very much open to suggestions. Also, I know this goes without saying, cause I kinda just did it without saying anything. I'm gonna shoot for maybe uploading every 2 weeks, because I feel like just the quality of the videos I make is better when I have 2 weeks at a time to work on something. But if it is something I'm super excited about, I'll probably get it out, like, within a week. So yeah, just give me, like, 2 weeks at a time, and then if it's something I really want to get out, I will get that out as quick as I can. But anyway, thank you for watching, I'll see you in the next video.